I appreciate all of y'all coming. Got a few non-master gardeners and a lot of nice master gardeners who see enough of me. I always sitting around trying to think of something interesting to talk about that somebody has not beaten to death, and I thought, vines. Because when you think about your yard, you think about flowers, more flowers, annuals, more flowers, hostas, hydrangeas, azaleas, camellias, all those sorts of things. Those are the things that pop in our minds. But I recently had a situation where I decided I was tired of looking at something that I didn't want to look at anymore, and I was trying to decide how to hide it. And I thought, a trellis and a vine. So I got on the internet and I ordered me a wonderful trellis, and then I got on the internet and I ordered me a vine that's probably going to take over my entire yard. But I got a much better view now. So anyway, we're going to talk about vines, and if anybody has a question or has a complaint about a vine or thinks I may have said something wrong, you don't have to wait to send me on Facebook. You can raise your hand and tell me. Anyway, clinging vines, that came from something that I had read or my husband had told me about, and I really like the title, Clinging Vines. There's Andrew. Welcome, Andrew.
Glad to be here.
Andrew, did you get my email?
I did.
Okay, good. Thank you. I have to tell you a story about this one before we get started. Before we had a dog and before we got old, we actually went on a trip. This was 12 years ago, and that's the last really big trip we went. We went to London, and we had a driver, and he rode us out in the country. And then there were all the little houses that everybody hears about that's supposed to be in the English countryside. So we drive up to this little house. It's got the cottage garden. But what fascinated me is he's got wisteria all over his whole house. Here we would run. So I decided I would get out of the car and walk up and take a picture. My husband said, I don't think you ought to do that. I said, I'm going to do it anyway. He says, I really don't think you ought to do that. So I get out of the car and I'm walking up his driveway, and all of a sudden he appears. And I introduced myself, and I told him I was fascinated with his yard. And like all gardeners, I had to look at everything in his yard. But when was the last time that y'all saw a wisteria all over someone's house? But isn't it wonderful? Maybe they don't think of it as a pest, but I will tell you one thing that's interesting. If you can see in the corner, see that big tree? Where he lives, if you have a really nice old tree, they look at it, and if it's a nice tree and it meets a certain qualifications, you get a plaque for that tree, and you cannot ever touch it without permission. You cannot go out and decide you don't want that tree, because that tree is now a big thing. And I wish we would do that here. Why vines? First of all, anybody recognize this vine? Where are my LBG people? This is at the museum on the wall. It's huge. Hayes told me it was a sky or blue trumpet vine, Thunbergia grandiflora, and it's big. And why do we want vines? We're going to hide eyesores like I was doing. We're going to cover an ugly fence like I am doing. I have about a 48-year-old chain link fence that belongs to my neighbor. So I spent about 42 years covering it up, and he announced to me about 6 months ago that he's going to take it down and put up a different kind of fence. And I said, what about my stuff? it can be a focal point. I mean, this is a grand focal point. The next time y'all go up to LBG, walk into the museum and look at this wonderful vine on the trellis. The pollinators, so many of the vines are so attractive to pollinators. Many of them smell good, and many of them, if you have a pergola and you want to cover it to make shade so that you can sit under it, it gives you shade. And another thing you can do is decorate something. Like my trellis, I'm decorating it with a jasmine. And it has like tripled in size. Now they make gorgeous trellises that you don't have to decorate. But if you just want to decorate something, and I noticed that a lot of the buildings at the museum complex are decorated with vines. And I say, go vertical. We're used to being down here, sort of on a horizontal line with an occasional vertical tree. So when you use a vine, you use the air going up this way. Does anybody recognize this vine? When you walk into the Anniston Museum, this is a Virginia creeper right on the front of the building. And it definitely is going vertical. So that way you don't waste any of your yard. You go this way and you go this way. And I got the definition of a vine in case we needed to know exactly. Okay, if I said, what's a vine? You kind of stumble around and you think, well, what is a vine? Well, now you've got the definition, so you'll cheat and read it to me. But if you think about it, how would you describe a vine?
Thing that Tarzan swings on.
That's very excellent. This is any plant having a long, slender stem that trails or creeps on the ground or climbs by winding itself about a support, holding fast with tendrils. And I had a vine this morning, and you could see the tendrils really well, but I had already made my PowerPoint and my copies. But this is in Jacksonville, across the street from the Catholic Church. There's a bunch of bushes, and this vine is in it. Okay, I have a little app on my phone. It says, "What's this?" And I took a picture of it, and it told me it was a big root morning glory, a native perennial. Now, picture this, could be wrong, but that's what they said it was. I thought it was a morning glory, and it is. It's just a different kind of morning glory, but it's beautiful, and it's growing all over these shrubs. Twining vines, we all love those. And I got a really good look at a tendril today, and it was like if I took my hair and made little curly keys right here, that's what a tendril looks like. So it's good for a trellis because it can climb up. It's good for a fence. It's good for an arch, a post, or a pergola. Sometimes you might have to give it a little head start to get it to run up certain things and tie it, just to get it so it knows where it's going. It is the easiest vine to grow, a twining vine, because it goes like this. And if it's a pergola or a wall, sometimes you have to just start it up. Like I have a lot of little trellises that I bought that went in pots that I tied my clematis to, and I wanted the clematis to know it was supposed to go that way instead of that way. So I give it a little help with a twist tie or something so it knows where it's going. This is a trumpet vine. Anybody recognize this vine? Where have y'all seen this vine? It is on the wall at Longleaf, and it's getting really big. And it is Campesus radicans. It gets 40 feet long. That's a long vine when you think about it. And it'll take full sun, and it's in full sun there. It blooms in the summer, and of course it's a pollinator's delight because it's got that trumpet. Next time you go to Longleaf, Look to the right, and there it is, growing up the building. Now, this is my favorite vine today, and it's Clematis. And they grow on little tendrils, and you can't really see the tendrils if you look real close, but I put little trellises in all my pots. If you look right at the very bottom, sort of halfway in the middle, you can see something that's trying to climb. And they will hold on to anything. And you wouldn't believe how strong those little things are until you try to get one off of something. And they have a mind of their own. If they don't want to grow up the trellis, they'll grow all over the ground. And they'll grow on anybody that's around. Mine are in my native azalea. Then I decided this is a great idea. It'll save me trellis money. So I planted one on a camellia. One camellia. I planted another one on another camellia. The other one just climbed in the gardenia by itself, and another one went in the native azalea, and I took it out, and I thought, hey, good idea. I'm going to put it back. And so now it's climbing up the native azalea. So if you've got a plant that, it's just kind of sitting there, there's nothing more wonderful than to see. I saw a lot of pictures of the clematis interwoven with the plants. This is another clematis on a trellis. Everybody in this room perennial. Everybody in this room knows that I have a plant problem. I'm not going to sit here and pretend to y'all that I don't. So about a year ago, I was at Blooming Miracles, and she had 5, and I bought them all. Then I went somewhere, and they had some more, so I bought a few more. And then I got home, and I didn't realize didn't have enough places to let them climb, so I decided we would climb some on the fence that's going to be torn down, and we're going to let some of them climb in the bushes. But I've been reading, if you go to YouTube, the British love clematis. That's what they say, clematis. And their view of a clematis is very different from ours. First of all, they say, do not plant one in a plastic pot. Plant only in terracotta or ceramic. Well, we can't do that because we don't have that kind of weather. But I have adored watching them. The whole pandemic, a lot of them, when they go in to prune them, they cut them all the way back or halfway down to the ground, and they just whomp them like that. And I'm just barely pinching mine, but they can take a lot of pruning. Aerial roots, I know y'all have seen this. They'll climb on anything. They'll climb on a house, they'll climb on a tree. They don't climb from stems or leaves, and they don't come up from underground. They attach themselves almost like a monster. And you also have to watch if you let it happen on your house. I'm from Columbia, South Carolina, and there was a neighborhood not far from me, and the big deal was to plant ivy on your house. And I thought, ivy on all these houses because it can eat the mortar out. But have you seen trees with these kind of, as a matter of fact, I saw some the other day, but I didn't have my camera. But have you anybody got any of these in their yard? Huh? Wisteria. Oh, yeah. Lady Banks rose. This is a vine, although it's not the kind of vine we think about. It doesn't climb by tendrils. But what I do, this is the Lady Banks rose that our Cane Creek people have tenderly taken care of. And it's right by the front fence. It blooms in April. It's a rose without any thorns. You have to give it a little help to get started. And I've tied mine in a few places, and what it'll do, it grows on these really long canes, and it kind of sprawls. Have y'all ever looked at yours out there and noticed that it doesn't really attach itself? It just sort of leans on it and grows farther and farther. They can get huge. And I let one get way, way, way too big. These will take part to full sun, and they will grow. I got one halfway up a pine tree, and then the silly thing died. My yard man was not too happy about getting that out of that tree. Carolina jessamine. Some people love it and some people curse it. If you got an ugly fence and you want to hide it, this'll do it. But if you got anything around, it'll make its way over there. Like it's climbing on my rose. It'll climb a trellis or a chain link fence in a heartbeat. You can also use it as a ground cover. If you've got a place where there's erosion or it's just big and ugly and you don't want to plant grass there, put this plant down and just let it run, because in addition to going this way, it'll go this way. It can get 20 feet long, which is a big bush. It likes full sun. I don't fertilize mine because I don't want it any bigger than it is, because right now it's trying to eat my rose. It's the state flower of South Carolina, and it is a native vine for those of you who are interested in natives. Carolina jessamine. I had the hardest time. Carolina jasmine. No, it's Carolina jessamine or Gelsium sempervirens. It's really pretty, but it can get out of control. So you do have, you know, there's no such thing as a no-maintenance plant. If people say, I don't want any maintenance, if you have one, you have to keep after it. Or like I say, it's trying right now to eat my climbing rose. So we're doing battle because I don't want it to do that. And here's another beautiful clematis. Do all of our Cane Creek people recognize this beautiful thing? And those of you who've ridden by it, who've gone out to Cane Creek for something, it is out on an old wagon wheel out in the front bed. They call it the goat bed, I think. Is that correct? It's in the goat bed. It's the queen of vines. It's deciduous. It's perennial. It likes good garden soil. It likes to be well amended. And what they say about clematis, face in the sun, feet in the shade. So you can plant some perennials around it or some annuals around it just to shade its roots, or just mulch it. There's a lot of rules about pruning a clematis, and I could stay here about 2 days, and I don't think they fixed enough for supper. This is Jack Monty, and for any of you who have not seen this, it will absolutely, is there anybody who hadn't seen this yet? Hadn't everybody seen it out on the, it's magnificent. Trumpet honeysuckle. Anybody recognize this one? Where's this tree? Where's this bush? Come on. Y'all know where it is. Andrew, Tim, that's right. It's in the Sweet Tea Garden at Cane Creek Community Gardens, and it is on a trellis. It is a native, and at one point, y'all had some kind of caterpillar eating it so that you could have a butterfly. It's a pollinator. It can also get very long. It needs support. It's got to grow on something. And you can tell from the picture, I think that is a 1-year-old plant. I could be wrong, but I think it's been out there about a year. And then I've got a close-up of the beautiful flower. Now this is gorgeous. Just need to understand that it grows. But if you've got a pergola that y'all like to sit under, I mean, you get some great shade. Or if you just want to have a trellis as an accent point in your yard, this is beautiful. And then you've got the pollinators. This is Dutchman's pipe. I don't know this plant, but I kept reading about it. It's vigorous. Y'all know what that means. It blooms in the summer, and it's known for its foliage, and it has little tiny flowers. And anybody have one of these? She's got one? She had a lot of them. So do y'all have a lot of them out in the botanical gardens for sale?
Is this gonna be our next month's talk? This one?
This is another beautiful trumpet honeysuckle. It's actually smaller than the other ones. This one's called John Clayton, and it loves to grow on a tree. And I'm fixing to show you one of the prettiest pictures I've ever seen. This is that I've taken. This is a native, and it's also a pollinator, and it is beautiful. But I want you to see what it can do. That little tiny thing can do that. And it doesn't really hurt the tree like ivy does because it's not attaching itself. Have y'all noticed this at Blooming Miracles? I'm sure all of y'all have been out there. Next time you go out there, take a look at the tree. Bougainvillea. I took this picture at, I believe that this is in the yard. Oh, I know where this is. Let me think. Bougainvillea. This is at longleaf in the pots. And instead of growing up, they've got it growing out. But it.
Isn't that Diplodina?
I've got Bougainvillea.
Yeah, I think it's Diplodina.
I may have gotten this picture off the internet. Have any of y'all noticed this at I think this.
That looks more like mandevilla.
Well, Diplodina is a type of mandevilla, or it's in the same family.
Well, I'll show you
But
the.
it's not the vigorous mandevilla itself. It's more behaved and trailing.
Yeah, and I have actually, there's a difference in the petals. And this can get 30 feet. It's great on a trellis. This is what you see as a mailbox vine.
Diplodina has thorns and it has cluster blooms.
I've got a picture we can look at. There's a difference between how the petals do. I'm pretty sure I took that picture at Longleaf, and Cheryl told me that's what it was, but you know, I could be wrong. Have any of y'all ever grown a moon vine from seed? Isn't it more fun? I tried to germinate 6 seeds, and only one of them germinated, and now it's only grown about this big. But last year, I got one somehow from Hayes, and I put it up next to a chameleon, didn't even realize it had grown all the way through it. But this blooms at night. It is a pollinator for the moths, and it smells heavenly. And it is so beautiful. Somebody at some of the plant sales, y'all ought to be doing this plant to sell, because the one I bought as a plant did much better than the one I tried to grow from seed. Let me think who sold me the black-eyed Susan vine. Not one, but two. I mean, actually, it is wonderful. But it will it's got more little tendrils, and if you've got an ugly chain link fence and you want to hide it, this is the most precious little plant. The problem arises when it dies back in the winter and it's ugly and you have to unwind it. But it is gorgeous and precious. And y'all didn't have any this year, so I didn't get one. But I wish I had. Anybody got an ugly chain link fence besides me?
Neighbors do.
Your neighbors do? Plant this on it. You mean I'm the only one with an ugly chain link fence? Everybody else lost theirs in the tornado. But this was the most beautiful, beautiful vine. And I had it in this color and another color. Was it yellow?
Yellow.
Okay, I love this vine, a passion vine, but it can be a bully. Hayes told me to give it plenty of room, and there are a lot of different passion vines, and so you look for one that may not get quite as extreme. But, I mean, this can spread vigorously from seeds and underground roots. This is a perennial. It's a native. It's a pollinator, And to me, it's one of the most fascinating flowers I have ever seen. Isn't that just out of this world? This is not at my house, but can y'all see how it's growing up that trellis? Can you see all the little tendrils going up? You can see good in this one. Common jasmine. This will take over. It's a semi-evergreen vine and shrub, and it'll take sun. It's extremely fragrant and absolutely wonderful. It's hardy here. If we get a really terrible freeze, it might get sad like mine did and die, but then you can always get another one. That's my motto. If one dies, look in the catalog and buy another one. Here's winter jasmine. It makes a bush and a vine, and it blooms in the winter. Who's got one of these growing? I have one in the Pocket Park. Is there one at Longleaf? You don't know? Is there one at Cane Creek? Anybody got one? Well, it really is a pretty thing, but it can get outlandish when it feels like it, but it's gorgeous. And it blooms in the winter when you don't have other things. I don't understand the attraction for this plant, but the other day when I went to Tree Amigos, I looked, there was 3 pots, and I said, "Is that Smilex?" And they said, "Yeah, some people like to plant it around their door." Now, this is the one without the thorns, which I would appreciate better than the thorn. The one with the thorns is a nuisance. But this really is a beautiful plant, and it's a Smilex, and people really do like it. It's evergreen. You can decorate your house with it. You can put on a fence on it. You could let this maybe grow on a mailbox because it only gets 8 feet high. This is American Wisteria. This is the only kind of wisteria you want. If it doesn't say American Wisteria, pick your purse up and go in the other direction. This one, the flowers appear after the leaves. It's fragrant, and it is better behaved than the non-natives. This is something really special. This is at Cane Creek Community Gardens, and this is called the muscadine vineyard. And you know, sometimes we can eat the things that grow on vines. So here we've got muscadine grapes that are growing on an antique piece of farm equipment, and they're really just getting going. But if you want a vine that you can eat off of, plant it on a fence, and you'll have some grapes.
Will they fruit in shade?
Yes, because theirs is in the shade. Y'all's is not in, and it's not in the full sun. Isn't it in part shade?
Some sun, but
Not full sun. And it's growing.
it has fruit on it.
It does have fruit on it. I took another picture. Here's confederate jasmine, which I love. It's not in the jasmine's family. I'm going to take a big try at this. Trochelospermum jasminoides. I hope that was right. It's a non-native from China, evergreen, and I bought one called Madison, who is less vigorous, and this is what's climbing on my trellis. And now I'm going to tell you, that little thing is going to town. I can't wait to smell it. I planted it next to my garbage can. Here is a mandevilla. And I got this off the internet, so I know this is a mandevilla. And you can tell it's got different kind of, I shouldn't say I got it off the internet, because master gardeners are told that the internet is not a good source of information. But if you don't grow something, you have to look for a picture. It's beautiful. It's an annual vine. It's going to die back. This is also something that people put around their mailboxes. It needs sturdy support and water. So the other one was a bougainvillea, because this is a mandevilla. Has anybody ever grown a mandevilla? Are they easy to grow? You see them at Lowe's?
I killed mine.
You killed yours. Jerry, Jerry, how'd you kill yours?
I don't know. I don't know if I started overwatering it and then we had all that rain.
Yeah, it says it likes lots of water, but it doesn't like to be in the hot afternoon sun.
That could be the problem.
Yeah, it says
No sun, but
it says part to full sun, but it doesn't like the. There are a lot of plants that say full sun, but they can't stand the Alabama full sun. Include cypress vine. Teresa, is this it? Okay, it's an annual vine. It reseeds prolifically. You know what that translates to? It can be most anywhere, but the hummingbirds love it. It can be an aggressive grower, but I haven't had any problems with mine, and it is really pretty. Cross vine. Oh, excuse me. Let me take this back. This is the one at the museum. This is the one at Longleaf, not the other one, because I recognize the building, don't y'all? I got my two vines. Their flowers are very similar. Yes, this is the one at Longleaf. It's a native, it's a perennial. He'll grow in the shade or the sun, but the more flowers and the more sun, it's evergreen. It's good at scaling walls, and it'll get 50 feet with little tendrils, and hummingbirds will love it. So their flowers are very, very similar.
It's not there anymore, but the wall on 15th Street there by the.
Wait a minute, what happened to it?
She's talking about a different one. It's not there. Cut it down.
It was there 2 weeks ago.
No, she's talking about something else. Right, she's talking about, she just started the sentence off, like it sounded like that one.
Oh, what'd they cut down?
The crossvine, I believe they cut down on that wall. Oh.
At Longleaf?
No, at First Methodist.
Oh, okay.
On the 15th Street
S-
side, it was on the wall around the playground.
Okay.
They cut it down, Jimmy Roberts, I think, planted it.
I'm sure he did. This is a wonderful plant. Now, I was told by Hayes Jackson that this is his favorite vine. But he really said this one was. It's a firecracker vine, candy corn vine. Doesn't it look like candy corn? It's Manettia. It's got 2-color flowers. It's a perennial. It is not a native. He told me his died in the drought. Now I know why. It has to be kept moist. But this one only gets 15 feet, so it's not like a 50-footer. This is a kiwi. Anybody recognize this kiwi? Yeah. It's over there where the knockout roses are on the fence right by the street. And Hayes planted it, and he told me it came from a variegated seedling in his yard. And y'all have never had any little kiwis, because you need a boy and a girl. And you need a real sturdy support, and that thing is big. It's really, really big. Really big. But it's beautiful. I had one of these, a climbing hydrangea, and it went up my pine tree, but the problem was it made these great big roots, and they ran all over my yard, and they were trying to visit everybody else, so eventually I had to take it down. But if you've got a place for it, it's glorious. It has like lace cap flowers on it. Mine was in the shade, and I don't think it'll grow in the sun, and you do have to water it. And it's got those kind of roots like ivy does, but didn't seem to hurt my tree. It just kept running all around my yard, and it finally left. This is my rose. Now you say, is a rose a real climber? Yeah, it is. It's called an old-fashioned climbing rose. It came from the old-fashioned Rose Emporium in Texas. And I'm sorry to say that it doesn't look this good anymore, because time and the seasons have gotten it, and you get this disease and that disease, and it got too big this way and too big this way, and I had to kind of cut it down. And they have huge canes. I mean, just giant canes, and they were taking over everything, so I had to prune it. That's the fence that's going to come down. So don't ask me about the rose, because the rose has been there over 30 years. So I'm not currently addressing that problem yet. But what we think we're going to do is cut the rose to the ground. But I do occasionally tie it, but it smells so heavenly, and it's got thousands of little flowers on it about this big. I haven't been as kind to it as I should. Fragrant honeysuckle. Run!
Yes, it will take over everything.
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 Now, I don't know why I don't have this as an invasive. It says it's aggressive, but they don't list it as an invasive. But it will grow fast. But do you remember when you were little kids and used to pick the flower and suck the nectar out of them, and how sweet it was? That's like one of your good childhood memories. Now, this gets 6 to 10 feet, so it's not terrible. And it loses its leaves. It's not like some of the other ones can be. This is a false hydrangea vine, Japanese hydrangea vine, and I am not giving this a guess. If anybody else wants to try it, they're welcome to do it. This is not a native. It looks a lot like a climbing hydrangea. This one goes to 30 feet. And this is not my picture. I got it from Proven Winners. Now, if I were doing this for master gardeners, I could not use this picture, because master gardeners, you either take them yourself, or maybe somebody gives me a picture and I give them credit for it. Aha! Here are our friends, invasive vines. Don't ever be convinced to buy this vine. Don't let anybody ever give you this vine. If you ever see this vine, take it up. My sister curses it on a daily basis. It has little seeds that look like little air puffs. She says it winds itself around everything that you can imagine, and you can't get it out. Well, I got mine from Jimmy Roberts, but before it got too big, I found out that it was not going to be a friend, and I got rid of it. But it's deciduous. Yes, it's beautiful, but it'll go everywhere. Let's call my sister and ask her about her her sweet autumn clematis, and see what she's got to say. We all know what this is. Need I say more? Once it's there, it's never gone. Do I need to say more about this? You know, they brought kudzu into this country to feed the cows and fight erosion. They call it the vine that ate the South. I don't see as much of it as I used to. It may be because I'm not out on the interstate, but I'm sure it's out there. And it looks like big dragons. But it was brought over here for a reason. They planted it. Chinese wisteria. Run! Don't walk. It is a non-native. It spreads by seeds, and it can form roots wherever a root touches the ground. And I like this. You can tell a Chinese one because the roots twine in a counterclockwise way. Now, I know a lot of people love wisteria. And I can remember when I was a little kid, it grew everywhere, and I had a terrible, terrible allergy. Anybody got wisteria in their yards? Have you tried to get rid of it?
20 years.
Sarah, have you just given up?
It was in the woods behind our house, and Jimmy has been all winter trying to get it out, and it's, with all this rain, you look out there and oh my goodness, here it comes.
Do you expect it to show up in your bathroom?
It's trying to get in the house.
I'm figuring it. Here's another one. Now see how different they look? But you don't want this one. Its roots twine clockwise. If you happen to get this one, deadhead it before it seeds. Has anybody got this one? I haven't seen it. I'm used to seeing the other one. It says the stems can destroy a building. Uh-oh. Aha, anybody had this? Japanese climbing fern. Maybe you didn't know what it was and you thought it was something cute and precious and it was a vine, like I did, until I found out it's not. It can get 90 feet long and it will strangle. So if you see this, it was growing in my azaleas. You need to act quickly because it spreads with little spores and it will go everywhere. Plus it's a fire risk. It can catch fire really easy. A lot of non-native plants, and that's one of the things that we're going to talk about next month, that a lot of these plants are fire risks and we just don't realize it. But you know, I'm a one-woman bandwagon trying to convince people don't plant Nandina and don't plant privet. Uh-oh, somebody's got privet. Constant battle. Constant battle, yes. Oh, yes, and somebody actually, in our Sprouts newsletter, I asked what was your favorite plant, and the person said, oh, those old roses they see on the fences and out in pastures, and I thought, they can really take over. Okay, how many of you have lost your minds pulling up Virginia creeper this summer?
That's the one that looks.
Yes. You mean the rest of y'all don't have Virginia creeper? Or nobody wants to admit that they don't have it? Virginia creeper comes up everywhere. It got halfway up a pine tree and had these giant roots. It is all over my yard. I spend hours pulling it up because once it gets established, it will go like crazy. It is not technically invasive, but it's very aggressive. Here is another story about this. You see that it is beautiful. On our one trip that we went to London, we went to this beautiful old building, and in England, they think Virginia creeper's really special. And this whole building was covered with it. So, you know, nobody's as smart as Hayes. And I told him that about this vine that I'd seen in England, and it was just taken over everywhere. And he said, well, is it the American Virginia creeper? Is it the Asian Virginia creeper? Or is it another kind of, I don't remember. And I said, I don't know. It just looks like Virginia creeper, and I know that I am being, it's just coming at me from every direction, and it makes a really, really long vine. It'll climb all over your plants. It will go up a tree. It is attempting to get on my back porch, and I refuse to allow it. Aha, Japanese honeysuckle. This one is invasive. This is non-native. It's very fragrant, but once it gets in your yard, it's there for good. And I know some people like it. Anybody battling this? Good luck. You know, the problem is with so much of this stuff is it gets in your flower beds and you can't spray it with Roundup. The only thing you can do is just sit and pull it up. This was a plant that I was discussing with Victoria at Blooming Miracles. And she told me that she had she knew a lady that grew this plant. Akebia Quinata. It is invasive. It smells like chocolate. Naturally, it's a non-native because it's invasive. 30 to 50 feet, vigorous. It likes sun, and it's invasive and aggressive. And I mentioned it to Hayes, and I said, Hayes, do you know Akebia? He said, Oh, I hate that. And I knew then it must, for a person who loves everything, when he says he hates it, I know it must be really bad. But Victoria was telling me that everybody didn't have to like everything, and she knew somebody and they really liked this. But I don't think it's a plant that you want to put in your yard, 50 feet. Oriental bittersweet. This is another one that you don't want in your yard. It's a non-native perennial. It's a woody vine. And you see the roots on it. Have you noticed a little pattern that most of these invasive plants are not native? You very rarely see a native invasive plant. Aha, here's our favorite. Who's had poison ivy this summer? Oh, poor Janice. She showed it to me. I saw it. She got into it. I haven't gotten into it this year, but I've gotten into it like 5 years in a row. And it is not fun when it grows all the way around your eyes. And the problem with poison ivy is it's poisonous in the winter when it's dead, and it will grow up a tree. And even after you spray it, it's still poisonous. And if you get hold of the root, it's still poisonous. Even if it looks deader than a doorknob, it's still poisonous. Poison oak. A lot of people call poison ivy poison oak, but we don't see as much poison oak. Can you see the difference between poison oak and poison ivy? I've never seen this in my yard, but I've seen a lot of poison ivy, especially on my body parts. And did you have poison oak?
I thought I had poison oak, but it doesn't, what I have looks like Virginia creeper.
It's poison ivy. But
It's not the three-leaf.
okay, I'm going to tell you something that you may not have known, and I did not know. People can have a severe reaction to Virginia creeper, just like poison ivy.
I found that out this summer too. My husband said,
Yes.
don't touch that one. That one's poison.
Yeah, and I don't know. I was talking to my neighbor, and he told me if he gets in it, he just breaks out. I always tell people it's Virginia creeper. Don't worry about it. But that's not so. You can actually really break out from it. And so I'm going to suggest if you're pulling Virginia creeper, don't be foolish like me. Wear some gloves. Do y'all know how to get rid of poison ivy? This is the tried and true poison ivy way to get rid of it. First, you put on a lot of clothes. But the next step is you put on a glove. Then the next step is you get a Walmart bag. You put it over your hand like this. Then you lean down and you pull it up. And then you sort of pull that bag that's down over your arm, over the poison ivy, and then you stick it into another bag, and then you tie it up. It works. I mean, even if you spray it and you want to get rid of it, don't pull it up because it's still poisonous. I like this quote. See all of us sitting together, we're a small group. A lot of us are master gardeners, and you know how much I appreciate that y'all support me doing this, because I know you have lots of places you can get your CEUs. And I want to thank all of y'all, Marilyn, Martha, all of y'all, our gentleman in the back who comes with his wife, and Andrew, and everybody that came here. And I don't know Ada's daughter's name, but I appreciate you coming with Ada. But it means when you're standing up here talking and putting yourself out here and getting words that you can't always pronounce, and sometimes a plant is not the one that you thought it was because you took its picture and your app on your phone wasn't exactly right, that people actually come out and sit and listen to you. And I appreciate the fact that Teresa lets me come. So, Tim, would you read us this quote?
Gardens and flowers have a way of bringing people together, drawing them
Isn't that true? Isn't that why we volunteer? Isn't that why some of us stand out in that heat and crawl on our hands and knees and pull up weeds with another friend? Because the gardens have brought us together and made us friends, and we have something we appreciate. I've been doing flowers with Marilyn for more years than she wants to probably even think about. She regrets that first day I crossed her path. She and I have a mutual love of a lot of different flowers. Before Teresa comes up here, does anybody have a question? Anybody got any bites this year? Anybody want to show their bites? Fire ants are bad this year. Oh, flies. And you know what's the worst? The gnats. Anybody found a way to get rid of them? But you know what I don't have? I've had 2 butterflies.
I ain't seen many either.
And who said they had a lot? At your house?
I planted zinnia seeds.
Yeah.
Before my vegetable garden, and so I have lots of zinnia, and the butterflies are just all over them.
I have everything you can think of. And today was my first real day. Have the butterflies come to the butterfly garden at Cane Creek, because when I took pictures out there for an hour and there wasn't a single butterfly.
When it was at its peak, there were a lot of butterflies.
And I have a lot of bees.
Yeah. Last year I planted bachelor buttons.
Mm-hmm.
The butterflies were all over that now, but I tried to start some this year and it didn't work.
Mine didn't do, but I am not seeing and I'm not seeing near as many hummingbirds as I usually do. I mean, we usually have them fighting. Has anybody got a lot of hummingbirds at the? How many have you got, Carolyn?
I'd say 5 or 6.
Oh, they're at Carolyn's. What you putting in your sugar syrup?
I just do 1 cup of sugar and 4 cups of water, and I boil it. I bring it to a boil and then I shut it off.
You're not putting any little extra treat in there. I have got maybe 2, and this is the first year that we did not put out, well, we put out feeders last year, but it kept spoiling. So this year I decided to feed them with flowers, and I know that they don't like it as much, but we had one out for about 2 months, and we didn't have anybody come to visit. Has everybody got butterflies but me? Very few. I am wondering, and this is something I've heard about, I have not seen a single monarch this year. You've seen a monarch? A lot? 3? That's not like it usually is. I'm wondering if that freeze in Texas may have done something to some of our butterflies. I heard that it may have affected the hummingbirds, but I don't know.
I didn't put out feeders so early because mine kept spoiling, and with all the rain wouldn't get in there and cause it to spoil, and I had them out there very long. But they've been on my tomato, flowers, the hummingbird, and my phlox, and black and blue salvia, and now I put the cedar out, and they're just fighting like they normally do at the end of summer.
Huh.
I asked, how do you know when the hummingbird, you said it's spoiled? How do you know it's spoiled?
It gets kind of cloudy looking.
There's floaties in it.
And the heat, it seems like, 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, about every 3 or 4 days, and it can get molded. So we change ours about every 3 or 4 days, and it can get kind of slimy, and you need to clean the little ports too. And we just stopped because it kept spoiling and nobody came to visit. And the other reason is the hummingbird feeder is my husband's responsibility. And so he took it down. He said, there's plenty to eat. I got some kind of red salvia. You remember that red salvia? I'm pretty sure I got it at Longleaf. And it's just fabulous, and they love it. They hang all around it, and if anybody wants some clippings, I'll be glad to share if you know how to propagate. Have you seen it in the greenhouse this year? It was about 3 years ago.
We've got lots of salvias, but I don't know which one that might have been. And you know that old-fashioned red salvia that people planted in front of their houses, 30 years ago? The hummingbirds love that, but I don't see people using that so much.
Mine is,
Old-fashioned.
it's red salvia. I thought it got from I bought what they call a hummingbird plant or something, and it almost kind of looks like a shrimp plant, and I was told they like that, but I haven't seen them flying around in it. But I do see them in that red plant that I got somewhere. But I see them in the cannas, and so I just.
And my cedar trees.
Your cedar trees?
Yeah, I don't know, unless they've got nests there or something.
Do you think they're nesting in there?
I don't know, I have no idea.
There might be an insect that's in there that they're.
Red like that.
I got a text message about something I want to ask you if you know anything about. It says toxic invasive poison hemlock.
Yeah,
Spreading into U.S. parks and backyard gardens.
I saw that.
Do we have that here?
I don't know, but I did see that.
It looks like Queen Anne's lace almost.
But I did see that. I will try to do before next month, before we talk about invasives. But I did actually see that, Sarah. Who did you get it from?
Well, I got it from my son who's not a plant person.
No, I got it. Master Gardeners now has for those of you who like to play on your computers, Master Gardener now has an Instagram page and a Twitter page and our Facebook page. And then I have a page, The Southern Gardener. And I wrote this morning, I said, I love beautiful pictures. And I said, flowers fix almost anything. So if you follow me on Southern Gardener, every day I post something beautiful for us to look at while I'm in the house, hiding from the pandemic.
Sherry, this is not a question really about flowers, but have y'all had a real bad problem this summer with squirrels?
Yes.
I
Yeah.
had such a problem that I took all my bird feeders down, and I love watching the birds at the feeders. I took every one of them down.
Yes.
Except the hummingbird feeder.
Yes.
It up.
We've had a anybody else?
They're chewing through my drip lines.
Oh.
It's been very expensive.
How many of you are having trouble with squirrels? Oh, we're having a terrible problem. Oh, I know. Yes. We actually had a house burned down from us, and they think squirrel. I've never seen them this bad. Never.
I live trap a bunch of them.
How?
I have a live trap.
Yeah. Did they go in it?
Oh, yeah, but, as soon as I took them out, some more would move right in.
But I hate to take my bird feeder down because I really enjoy what goes on out there, and it's really fascinating for my dog. She watches the bird channel. And I really, I survived the thing where all the birds were getting sick, and two of our master gardeners took me under their wing and told me about what was happening to the birds and how they were dying. So I was out there constantly Cloroxing my bird feeder. And you can guess.
Yes, the pine suskin.
And anyway, I was going to take mine down, and I went out and I looked at the birds and I said, my life's not that full. I can scrub this thing every few days. My husband said, you are crazy. But I was scrubbing everything. I was scrubbing the poles. I was handy washing everything. Anything there was water. I had 3 pairs of gloves on. Big cans of wipes that I was sacrificing. I like the birds, but the squirrels are very aggressive this year. I've never seen them like this.
One of my friends had squirrels chew all around her front door. on each side and the door accessible. And they couldn't imagine what kind of animal was doing that, so they got a camera. Set a camera up, that's how they saw it.
What did they do?
Well, I don't know what they've done at this point. I'm sure they are doing inhumane things probably. But they're really upset. They've lived there for like 27 years.
This is the worst year. This is the worst year I can remember for squirrels.
We took them out to the national forest, turned them loose, helped us out there one day, way out past Cane Creek, and they were policing the area. What are you doing? And I said, well, I've got some squirrels I want to turn loose near some water, but I think they got all their country cousins and rode the trolley back in the I've got more than I've ever had.
I know. I call, realistically, the law says you're not supposed to trap an animal and take it somewhere else. So do it under the cover of darkness. But my neighbor tried to trap a squirrel, and he is so annoyed with them. I've got a lot of these plastic pots, and they're all chewed around the tops. They've chewed them all. Well, anyway, I kept y'all 2 minutes too long.
Yeah, I was gonna say, my cats keep flying. They're around, but my cats keep them away. And, the interesting thing about birds, you know, the cat food outside, the cardinals are coming and the wrens are coming and eating cat food out of the hands. And my cats are lazy and slow, although they do keep the squirrels away, but, so I've enjoyed watching the birds eat out of the cat food.
I never knew that
And
birds.
it's good for it. Cat food's good for them.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's, highly nutritious.
Huh.
My parents have free-range chickens, and they'll eat cat food because they are lacking protein.
Huh.
Low on
But they
protein,
love
they'll
it.
crave the cat food because it has a higher protein count.
I did not. Where I live, I get a little worried about having outdoor cats because I'm afraid that someone might take a notion that they're not too happy about them. So, but where you live, you don't have to worry. I mean, you're out in the middle of,
Well, I mean, there are
And
people
you're-
who are gonna poison other.
well, but if you live out and you're off the road and whatever, you can do that. But if you live this far from the road, it's hard to do that. Anyway, any other questions? And if somebody has one, everybody else wants to leave, that's fine. I'm so glad to see all of y'all here today. And the Master Gardeners all know you just earned 1 hour CEU. I hope it wasn't a difficult hour.